of East Coast bias for your friends on FanDuel TV. Of course, right here on the Ringer Gambling Show, the triple threat, backed by popular demand, ready to break down all the ins and outs of these ever-evolving first-round NBA playoff series. JJ Jastremski with Raheem the Dream Palmer. Joe House, we had two games, gentlemen, on Wednesday night, and you had the Houston Rockets as small favorites. You had the Lakers as bigger favorites. And yet the Rockets will be playing a Game 6 on Friday. The Los Angeles Lakers, Joe House, will not. They will be hitting the golf course in Los Angeles. They will have baggy day on Thursday or Friday. And they got absolutely torched by Rudy Gobert. They got absolutely torched by Julius Randle. They had absolutely no answer for the Minnesota Timberwolves and their size. And even on a night when Anthony Edwards was awful, even on a night when the Minnesota Timberwolves missed 43s, for goodness sakes, they still go and win the game and pull away in the fourth quarter. This would have been a beatdown otherwise, my man.
Well, it was a beatdown. I mean, they did outscore the Lakers once again in a fourth quarter. You know, they beat them 22-16 in the fourth. But, JJ, this goes all the way back to the principles that we saw at the outset of this series, which was the mismatch of the Minnesota Timberwolves with their size and their versatility against the Lakers that are still yet a body or two short. They're just not big enough. They got killed on the boards, annihilated on the boards. The Timberwolves had 18 offensive rebounds, 54 rebounds to 37 rebounds. And you know, really the only thing that kept the Lakers in this game was the insistence of the T-Wolves to just keep chucking up those threes. I mean, if the 7 for 47 from three, this was a double-digit win.
I mean, they had wide open looks, like absolutely wide open looks. So it just wasn't like they just were completely chucking. It's just they just were missing shots. I mean, 7 of 47 from three. It almost felt like they were trying to repeat the 2018 Houston Rockets when they missed 27 threes in a row. So, you know, it really could have gotten ugly. But if you would have told me that Anthony Edwards would have 15 points in this game and went 0 of 11 from three and 5 of 19, I would have told you that this was going to a Game 6, and it's not, because the Lakers just do not have enough. And, you know, it's unfortunate, but, you know, they don't have the size. They try to throw Maxi Kleber out there in the end. I mean, they were just grasping for straws. But at the end of the day, the Minnesota Timberwolves were the better team. I'm a little mad at this one because this was not one that I called. This was one the House called, so give him all the credit.
Listen, I was all over this house with the Timberwolves as well. I liked them in the series. I didn't think they'd win a Game 7 in Los Angeles. But guess what? They didn't need to get there. You know, the Laker model, and you look back on it now, when they made the Doncic trade, I think all of us were of the mindset, hey, great trade long-term, gonna work wonders for the Lakers. But this roster was ever-evolving. There were a lot of moving parts. They had absolutely no size. And I think there was a narrative that was being written at the end of the regular season where it was if, oh, they can overcome that. And when you look, they couldn't. Like, you're playing a team like Minnesota and all of the versatility and all of the size they can throw at you. You know, Rudy Gobert basically going 30 and 20 in a playoff game. I mean, listen, Rudy Gobert is an exquisite defensive player. Offense hasn't exactly been his calling card. He's doing that. Randall was incredibly comfortable in this series. And, yeah, you could tell me those guys played well and they executed. That's great. I also think it speaks to what the Lakers don't have on the interior and why, you know, I think at the end of the day, we should have been looking at them as a team that, yes, has the glitz, the glamour, the Lakers, Luka, LeBron. They just didn't have the roster of a championship contender.
Coming into this was the worst possible matchup for the Lakers, in my opinion. If the Lakers had caught Houston, if the Lakers had caught Golden State, I think they would have had a much better chance of contending. The problem with Minnesota is twofold. First of all, this is a team that has the playoff chops. We've been talking about it. They were in the Western Conference Finals last year. They are not intimidated by the idea of going into another gym and playing top ball. They got 2 games in Los Angeles, no problem. And you know, a closeout game right there in Laker Nation. But really, the Timberwolves pulled it together at the right time. The chemistry of Randall and DDV, that addition, and they just, are a formidable team, a team to be paying attention to as these Western Conference finals play out.
This is really a legacy series for Anthony Edwards, because when you look back over the last couple of years, who did he knock out of the playoffs? He's knocked out Jokic out of the playoffs. He's knocked out KD, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal. He's now knocked out Luka Doncic and LeBron James. I mean, he has one hell of a playoff resume.
That's an excellent point on the behemoths he's knocked off over the last couple of years. And this one meant a little extra something, Raheem, after the way that Western Conference Finals went down, where Luka Doncic and Dallas stuck it to Minnesota. They had some fun at Minnesota's expense. They had some fun at Anthony Edwards' expense. And then you had to watch Luka Doncic basically hobble around the entirety of the second half. It was not vintage LeBron James by any stretch of the imagination in this game. But bottom line is, I don't want to hear about the injuries. I don't want to hear the excuses. Minnesota was the better team. They deserved to win. They deserved to win this series. House, before we get to the Rockets and the Warriors, Minnesota, the biggest threat now? When you think Oklahoma City, is that the team that would give them the most trouble out of anybody who's left playing? I think the answer to that is yes.
They are undoubtedly the most formidable foe remaining in here, and I can't wait to see. This is going to be, to me, Oklahoma City and Minnesota in the Western Conference Final.
Now, I'm very curious to what that price may be down the road, but we can't get there yet because the Houston Rockets, Raheem, had other plans with their Game 5 against the Golden State Warriors, and this is the Rockets in a nutshell. When they get going and they gain some confidence and they start hitting some shots, they look like a completely different team. And it's almost as if you take Houston, you want them, they got to win by margin. Because if the game is close and it's within Curry's grasp, it's within Jimmy Butler's grasp, it's like, okay, they're going to find a way to win it. Did that game reek to you, Raheem, of the Warriors knowing they kind of had one within their back pocket and it's like, hey, we're up 3-1 in the series? Or would you read a little more into that?
I want to lean towards, the Warriors feeling like playing with their food, but this is an older team. I mean, when you look at their best two players, one was drafted in the 2009 draft, one was drafted in the 2011 draft. And if you go back a couple years ago, when the Golden State Warriors, they played the Memphis Grizzlies in the second round of the postseason, they got blown out by 50. And in the next game, Ja Morant didn't play, but it was neck and neck down the stretch. So this Rockets team, you got to give them some credit because they are deep, they are long, they are athletic. And as long as they're able to just put the ball in the hoop, we know that their defense can make them competitive. So I wouldn't sleep on the Rockets. I'm not necessarily going to say that they're going to win this series, but, the last two games, they put up their best two offensive performances. And, maybe this is a trend going forward. Maybe it's not. But I think the next game will probably be close. It's not going to be an easy win for the Golden State Warriors, even if they do win.
I think that this is the blueprint for the Rockets, which is to say they start converting early off of Golden State misses, where, every possession, Golden State, if Golden State doesn't score in the first quarter, and Houston can get the ball and get moving downhill a little bit. Now, when you sit and look at the team stats, there wasn't a gigantic advantage in fast break points. There isn't a gigantic advantage in points in the paint. But I think a lot of that had to do with the way that the second half played out because Houston got up by such margin. And that margin was created by them just converting. They took advantage of every Steph miss and every Jimmy Butler miss, and they converted every single one, and they got up, and that was it. They were up, and there was no way for Golden State to cut into that lead because Steph didn't have it.
House, quickly, Friday night, game number 6, line opened at 5.5 down to 5. I know it's way too early. I know we got 48 hours. What's your lean, Rocket Warrior, with that number?
Golden State. All night long.
Raheem, your thoughts?
I think you go Warriors here. I'm saying this reluctantly, but I think they know that they have to get this one.
Listen, I get it, House. I get it, Raheem. I'm just not going to be surprised if we see a close game here. I'm just not. Let's put it this way. I will be stunned if Houston goes in there and wins game 6.
NBA.com defines clutch wins as a game in which the point differential is 5 or less with 5 minutes to go. The spread is 5. So, right there, this is probably going to be a clutch game. And then you got to remember, there's free throws at the end. So the Warriors could be up 3 points and, end up covering this just with free throws. So
we shall see. We will have a game 6. Maybe not the game 6 a lot of people expected going into Wednesday night. We have a lot more coming your way on this loaded edition of East Coast Bias. We have 2 games on Thursday night we're going to break down, but still making sense of the aftermath of a couple of teams that have said sayonara or 1, 2, 3 Cancun. Take your pick. We'll dive into that coming up next. Welcome back to East Coast Bias. Obviously, a lot of takeaways from the games that were played earlier in the week. We know a couple of teams that have already advanced. We know there were a couple of game 6s that need to be played. House, right out of the gate, man, we've been watching NBA basketball a long time. And let's make something clear. The Indiana Pacers were going to beat the Milwaukee Bucks regardless of what happened in game 5. They might have won in 6. They might have won in 7. They were the better team. They were going to win this series. That being said, House, I think about that game and the way it transpired in regulation, and even worse, the 7-point overtime lead that the Milwaukee Bucks had. And I am still, my dude, flabbergasted to how Milwaukee found a way to lose that game. Flabbergasted.
Except it kind of is the identity of that Milwaukee team. I mean, think about this, JJ. It took Doc 5 games to figure out his best lineup to compete with this Pacers team. And the thing with this Milwaukee team, all playoff series long, quite a bit of the regular season, they don't play any defense. And so when you don't have an answer for, defending over a couple minutes of crunch time or over 45 seconds down the stretch, it's the same fundamental problem. You make mistakes that lead to guys getting looks, and the other team occasionally knocks down those looks. And for sure, the Pacers went out and just grabbed a victory. But, this is kind of the Milwaukee brand with this particular group, Dream.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because Gary Trent Jr. was on fire. I mean, you're talking 33 points, 12 or 25 shooting, 8 for 17 from behind the arc. This guy was an honorary splash brother, and he's the guy that dropped the ball out of bounds. But you got to give kudos to Tyrese Halliburton because down the stretch in regulation, you got to remember, they were down 5 points in regulation as well. He took over. He had the game tying dunk. Then the game goes to overtime. It looks like the Bucks are running away with this thing up 7 with about 45 seconds to go, and he just goes off. So it doesn't necessarily warrant his father getting on the court and talking crazy to
Giannis
Antetokounmpo.
Like a complete clown. Let's call it what it is, Raheem. Acting like a complete clown.
Yeah, I mean, complete clown. It doesn't warrant that. But Tyrese Halliburton, he's shutting all of those overrated talks down.
Excellent point. Because I've been critical of Halliburton. I thought he was way too spotty in last year's postseason. At the end of this game, in regulation, at the end of the overtime, he came to play. And you could tell that overrated comment clearly bothered him because he was all over social media. He's jumping on the table Eric Devendorf style, for those that know the reference. If you know, you know. And the Indiana Pacers are on their way to the second round of the playoffs. Now, they're going to be taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers, Raheem. Cleveland made quick work of the Miami Heat. Cleveland has obviously been one of the best regular season teams in the NBA all season. This series price, though, I got to admit, Dream, and I'm curious to see where your model may have this. I'm curious to hear both of your takes on this. I took a look at the series price, and I'm thinking, all right, Cleveland's going to be minus 250. Cleveland's going to be minus 3-1. Raheem, 5.5 minus 550 for the Cleveland Cavaliers to win this series. That seems a little too hefty if you ask me. What am I missing here?
So if I'm using full season numbers, I think this number is short. I actually think this number should be about 840. I know that sounds gigantic, but my model has the Cleveland Cavaliers winning this series 89% of the time. I have them as a complete juggernaut. So I do think this number is a little short. But if you're using post All-Star break numbers, where, the Indiana Pacers, who, I mean, they've been dominant post All-Star break. And then, the Cleveland Cavaliers, they haven't been as good. This number's right on. But I prefer to use full season numbers. And I think the Cleveland Cavaliers, they should probably wrap up this series in 5 or 6 games max.
Oh, that's very interesting to hear you say that, Dream, because we will have an opportunity, at least I will, in the Best Bet segment to talk about my forecasted outcome for this series. But I will say this, JJ, I think that the Indiana Pacers are in for a shock. And to me, it boils down to, like, this is why I don't love my man Halliburton out there beating his chest about the overrated thing. Go up and wait till they play this Cleveland defense. Wait till there is no comparison. Over just the playoff segment, the Bucks were 14 out of 16 playoff teams in terms of their defensive rating. The Cavs are number 2 there, and it's just a radically different animal. This is, to me, a great matchup for the Cavaliers, especially on the coaching front, right? We saw Rick Carlisle just dance circles all over Doc Rivers, and it'll be good to have Doc back in media again. I mean, I can't imagine him returning to this Bucks team. We love Doc in media, but this is a radically different animal. I think that the Pacers are in for a shock to the system in terms of the intensity. They're going to start playing some proper playoff basketball. You can go ahead and say whatever you want about that last game, the closeout game, the intensity of that. That did have all the hallmarks of playoff basketball, but this Cleveland thing is a radically different animal, and I think that the Pacers are in for a world of hurt. I can't wait to bet game 1, to be honest with you.
So I think you're onto something with the idea of the major leap and jump in talent and caliber of team that all of a sudden the Pacers are going up against. Totally fair. Totally get it, House. This Indiana team's been balling out, though, for 2.5 months. And, Raheem, as far as your model is concerned with the full season numbers, I, for one, and again, I'm no mathematician, I'm not pretending to be, but what I would tell you from watching the Pacers final 2 months of the regular season and a team we've seen in the postseason, Raheem, to me, they look like a much more complete and a flat-out better team than the one we saw in November, December, January. They just look flat out better.
I can't argue with that at all. But the one thing I will say is that this line opened Cavaliers minus 480. It got bet up to 550, minus 550. So that tells you that the market thinks this line was short as well. So as good as Indiana was, I think Cleveland is just on a different level.
Fair enough. Now, gentlemen, the Boston Celtics, nobody's surprised. They go and take down the Orlando Magic in 5 games. They played that game in the first half, Raheem, where they're fooling around. Orlando's hanging around. Before you could even blink an eye in the third quarter, it goes from being a very tight, hard-fought Game 5 to a laugher, just like that. From what you saw in this series with Boston, is this, hey, a warm-up? They didn't have Holiday for a couple of games. They're getting their sea legs. This is the build-up for the postseason. Or did you watch some of these games? And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be in their next series coming up against Detroit or the New York Knicks, but maybe it's the conference finals or maybe it's an NBA final where there are just some signs with the Celtics that, for you at least, would have you maybe sounding some sort of an alarm.
There is no alarm. And I actually have a hot take. I actually think the Orlando Magic is a tougher opponent than the New York Knicks or the Detroit Pistons. Because if you look historically over the last couple of years, the Orlando Magic have matched up very well against the Celtics team. And the one thing that the Orlando Magic do very well is that they limit the amount of 3-point attempts. And we know Joe Mazzulla and this Boston Celtics team, they like to get him up from behind the arc. Well, they couldn't do that against this Magic team. So although the Magic can score, they do have a guy in Paolo Banchero who raises his level in the postseason. And if he had any help, I think this might have been a tough series. And then you got to remember, Drew Holiday was out for a couple games. But ultimately, I think the next round against either the New York Knicks or the Detroit Pistons, it's going to be an easier opponent.
Yeah, the only thing that you would be concerned about with Boston, JJ, is the injury situation. Drew Holiday was sitting out games to try and nurse his hamstring back to full health. Tatum's wrist, they had it taped up. He's clearly getting treatment. This rest that he's going to get over these next handful of days will be crucial. Jaylen Brown was kind of hobbled coming into the playoffs, and it was kind of an every other night situation with him. So it's just a question of Boston being healthy and this extra little bit of rest for them, because the Pistons handled their business the way they did in Game 5 against the Knicks is just tremendous. But I agree with Dream's take. Orlando is especially tough opponent for Boston. I don't think either Detroit or the Knicks have the defensive firepower to hold the Celtics back.
Especially when you consider the war that's going on between the Knicks and the Pistons, and more games, including one that is coming up later on tonight that is going to include a little bit more physicality as far as that goes. Not exactly the recipe for being in good shape, taking on a team as good as Boston. Speaking of those Game 6s, fellas, when we come back, the Knicks and the Pistons, I'm not happy about the fact this series went back to Detroit. Then you have the Clippers as sizable favorites against the Nuggets, despite the momentum in this series shifting quite a bit. Game 6 breakdown for each game. That's coming up next. Welcome back. We got 2 Game 6s to break down. We'll start with the Knicks and the Pistons. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Joe House, the Knicks were pathetic in Game 5. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. Jalen Brunson stunk. Karl-Anthony Towns stunk. No creativity from Tom Thibodeau in his offense. Thibodeau saving his time out for Game 6 when Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart are waiting to get back in the game. And I've given Cade Cunningham a hard time for some portions of this series for not getting it done in the fourth quarter. It was not a juicy stat line for Cade, but at the end of the game in Game 5, you know what he did? He made big plays, hit big shots. I respect that from a New Yorker. We like seeing guys come up when it matters the most. Now, Joe House, I picked the Knicks to win this series from Jump Street. I have to be honest with you, my friend. I'm not feeling particularly good about that prediction. Detroit should be up in this series if you really think about it, if you're going to be objective about it. The Knicks won 2 games already in this building. You're telling me Detroit is going to lose 3 games in Motown against the Knicks? Detroit's a 2-point favorite. I, for one, will not be betting the game. If I had to, I think this is going 7, my man. What's your read on Pistons Knicks?
Well, I'll just get it out of the way. I went ahead and bet the Pistons plus 380 on the FanDuel Sportsbook for the series, because we have seen enough of a sample with this Knicks team that they are repeating the same mistakes over and over again. They are engaged in a self-defeating exercise, and they just refuse to get out of their own way. 16 for 27 from the free throw line, JJ. What is going on? The advantage that the Knicks are supposed to enjoy is supposed to be on the offensive side of the basketball. It's taking them, great gymnastics to figure out how to get Karl-Anthony Towns the ball in places where he can leverage his advantage. I'm still waiting to see him in the post against Tobias Harris. There is no scenario under which Tobias Harris can stop Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't know why they're not spamming that action. Get that man the ball in a place where he can do something with it. And here's the biggest problem, JJ, and this is why I made the bet. Brunson's hurt. And every 100%. Every single game, there's something that is holding him back. He can't go 100%. I feel like it's deja vu all over again. I'm watching, the second round of last year's playoffs right in front of me, and the Pistons are maturing. They had the poise down the stretch. We're watching it happen in real time. I don't want to have anything to do with the Knicks any longer, JJ. I'm sorry. They don't have the horses. They can't get anything in terms of rim protection, meaningful rim protection out of Mitchell Robinson, and I'm no longer in a position where I'm expecting the Knicks to advance.
Yeah, I tend to agree with House on this one. Brunson is hurt, and then you have a guy in Mikal Bridges who's just not giving you anything at this point in time. And they're so reliant on Brunson that, Karl-Anthony Towns, he's there sometimes, he's not there. So it's very inconsistent from this Knicks offense. And when I look at this series as a whole, it feels like the Pistons could actually be up in this series. They dominated Game 1, and then in Game 4, they didn't get a foul call go their way. So they could really be up, or they could have won this series already. So I don't really want anything to do with the Knicks, but at the same time, the Pistons do lack experience. And, the game 6 line is pretty much telling you that this is kind of like a pick 'em. So ultimately, if Brunson is healthy, they could gear up and be able to, close this series out. But I'm staying away from this one. This is just a very entertaining series that I have no interest in betting at this point.
So I totally get that, Raheem. Now, I'm going to piggyback off of this because based upon what we've seen in the series, watching every single one of these games, despite the Knicks being up 3-2, this series price seems way too high. It is minus 490 for the Knicks to go and win this series. Is that just because they have 2 games to play with? It seems higher than it should be, the way I see it, Raheem.
I agree with you. And I think this is similar to, the Lakers or the Warriors series coming into, the postseason. I think there is a Knicks tax at this point in time. I've been saying, all throughout this series that I felt like the Knicks are laying too many points. Now, it hasn't always gone my way. In game 1, they were laying 7. And the Pistons should have covered that game. In game 2, the Pistons won outright. It just feels like there's a Knicks tax and they're overpriced all throughout this series. So I agree with you.
And House, it's interesting. The Knicks were in this exact same spot a year ago in the first round. Now, the game 5 loss against Philly, it felt far more fluky. That was just my read on it. Maxey hit an incredible shot. They ended up losing in overtime. Like, from my Knicks fan confidence meter, I was very confident the Knicks were going to go into Philly and play well, and I nailed it, and they ended up winning that game. My vibe with this team is nowhere close to the same. I'm not confident that they're going to go and win game 6. And I got news for you. If they play game 7, all the pressure in the world is on the Knicks. There is no pressure on the Pistons. And they've won at Madison Square Garden twice.
It's literally why I went ahead and bought on the Pistons. It's exactly that rationale, JJ. I've seen enough. I don't trust. Who do you trust on the Knicks other than Brunson? And if Brunson is impaired in any way, shape, or fashion, then you get a game like this: 4 of 16 from the field, 1 of 4 from 3 in 36 minutes. That should have been 38 or 39 minutes, except for his head coach can't figure out how to get the man on the basketball court at the end of the game. So you put all these things together, the price is right for the Pistons. That's all. I mean, I understand the Knicks may yet win this series, and that's fine, and I will load up on Boston when that happens. But at the price, at plus 380, come on, man. Give me a little taste.
Will Thibs have a job in 2 weeks?
Depends on what happens in a Celtics series. They're not beating Boston. We all know that. I think if they beat Detroit and they're in the games, Raheem, they're in the games. They lose in 5. They play a couple of close games. It's just clear Boston's better. And for what it's worth, we can spend a lot of time dissecting the faults of Tom Thibodeau, right? The offensive sets, not getting Anunoby involved, not doing enough pick and pop with Brunson and Towns. Like, that's all fair and justified. Jalen Brunson, as much as I love him, doesn't play defense. Karl-Anthony Towns, much as I love him, doesn't play defense. They're not as good as the Celtics. So, to me, firing him off of losing to the Celtics, they're not as good.
I mean, they could be losing to the Pistons at some point.
Well, Raheem, to me, there's 2 very different disclaimers on the status of Tom Thibodeau. They lose to the Detroit Pistons. I think he's out. I think he's out. I do not think he will survive the first-round outs. I think if they lose to the Celtics, it's more likely he's back. So that's the way I look at it. So we shall see. Now, Clippers and Nuggets. House, what the hell has happened the last 2 games in this series? After game 3, I could not have been more confident in the Clippers to go and win the series. We know what happened in game 4. Jamal Murray happened in game 5, and that was good old-fashioned whooping from the Denver Nuggets. Now the Clippers, sizable favorites in game 6. But now the biggest underdog they've been at any point in this series, according to the series price on FanDuel Sportsbook. House, I love narratives. Sorry, they're real until you see otherwise. That's just the way sports works. Like this same old Jets, starting to get a SOC kind of vibe. Same old Clippers. Am I wrong?
You're just now starting? Brother, we're there. What happened to this series? James Harden happened to this series. James Harden woke up 2 games ago and realized, I'm in the playoffs and I got to go be that dude? Wait a minute. And across the board, it has impacted this Clippers team. I mean, it's not appropriate or fair for me to pin all the blame on James Harden, but I think a sizable amount of the blame is properly allocated in that direction. Kawhi is trying his best. We knew that he was going to return to earth a little bit from his incandescent performance, a couple performances at the beginning of the series. But really, man, this is about the heart of a champion. The right thing to do is tip your cap to this Denver Nuggets team. 4 dudes that helped them win the NBA title 2 years ago with the best player on earth. And they're just not out here to roll over and let this Clippers team who, the top of the charts defensive rating, top of the charts offensive rating. Everybody look at the last month of this Clippers team. They're coming in. It's a great price. Let's all grab the price. Denver's like, get out of here with that nonsense. We're here to win some basketball games, and they're playing clutch basketball, and they're playing they have the best player in the world. They're not here to just roll over for the Clippers, even though the market has believed in the Clippers. The Denver Nuggets are winning this series. We're past the point. It's not going to happen for this Clippers team this season. They don't have the players. They keep playing Chris Dunn his 25 minutes and getting 0 out of it. Derek Jones, they're finally limiting his minutes, but they're not getting anything out of it. And it's too late. So that's it. Good job by the Clippers getting to this point in the playoffs, but they're donezo from my perspective, Dream.
Historically, I love to take who I see as the better team down 3-2 to come back and win the series. I am not doing that this time. House is dead right. This series is over. And the big reason why is because the Nuggets stars are better than the Clippers stars. If you look at James Harden, he's played 77 minutes over the last 2 games. He has 26 points. Guess who came off the bench last night in 25 minutes and scored 21 points? Russell Westbrook.
Mm-hmm.
So if Russell Westbrook is matching the production of your second best player, you cannot win. And then if you look at Kawhi Leonard, we all love Kawhi Leonard. He's a great player, but let's be real. He is not a leader. In San Antonio, he was led by Duncan, Ginobili, and Parker. In Toronto, Kyle Lowry was the leader of that team. If he was the leader that everybody thought he would have set the tone in Game 5. He did not set the tone. He scored points. He's a very efficient shooter, but ultimately he doesn't lead a team. If you look at the rest of this Clippers roster, they have a bunch of guys who can't shoot. Chris Dunn, yes, he made 3 3-pointers in Game 5, but as a whole, he's been bricking 3-pointers throughout this entire series. Nick Batum, he's been up and down. Bogdanovich, he's been up and down. Ben Simmons, he adds nothing offensively. And then Derek Jones Jr., what is he giving you? So you got a whole bench full of players who are just giving you nothing. So pretty much the Clippers offense is dependent on Kawhi Leonard, Zubac, Harden, who we know is disappearing, and Norm Powell. Nobody else on the entire team is giving you anything. Meanwhile, you look at the Nuggets. They got the best player in the world, Nikola Jokic. They got Michael Porter Jr., who's been gutting it out. They got Jamal Murray. And when he turns it on, nobody's beating the Nuggets. If Jamal Murray is going and Jokic is going, you are not beating the Nuggets. And then you got a guy like Christian Brown who's playing terrific defense on James Harden. I'm taking the Nuggets to win Game 6 on the road, on the money line. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you, they lose Game 6, I'm taking them again in Game 7. They are not losing this series.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up, Raheem. You would not hesitate here. Forget about the points. Forget about grabbing 6.5. Would you make the argument if you like Denver tonight, they're not going to lose close, they'll find a way to win the game? That's kind of the way I see it. To me, if the Clippers go and win Game 6, I think the Clippers win by double digits. I just think it's one of those games. They're back at home. They're cooking. They're humming. If this game is tight, and if it comes down to the wire, I think Denver's going to win the game. So to me, I don't see the value. I know it sounds crazy because it's like, wow, it's 6.5 points. It's a lot of points. Game is close. I think Denver wins, Raheem. I do.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think all of the short money is going to be on the Clippers. Like, I expect every professional bettor, everybody who's sharp to play the Clippers because of the desperation effect, the fact that people thought that they were better, they were power rated higher. But I don't trust this team. And the way I look at it is like this. If James Harden and Kawhi Leonard can beat the best player in the world 2 games in a row, take my money. I will literally drive to LA and give them my money.
I couldn't agree more with Dream, and I've already been there. I gave away all my money on Saturday on this bum-ass Clippers team. That was supposed to be the game. All the sharps, all the smart money. This is the Clippers. This line is crazy. And I watched my money walk right out of my pocket and go right down James Harden's toilet. I'm not doing that again. No, sirree. Sign me up for the Nuggets tonight and sign me up again if we get to Game 7. It's Nuggets, baby.
Gentlemen, we need some help on the Kentucky Derby. I'm not going to pretend to be a horse racing expert by any stretch. And listen, I'm always a sucker for a good tip when I get one. Mike Joyce over at FanDuel TV, he's like a regular May guest for us. Like this time of year, you expect to see Mike. Hopefully he can help us out, House and Raheem. We need some winners for the Derby. That's coming up next. This is becoming an East Coast bias tradition. I feel like it is a given, Mike Joyce. As we hit Derby week, we're going to see your lovely face. You're going to give us some great plays, and we're going to go on our way. So welcome back. How are you, my dude?
I'm good. I mean, we're right in the thick of it, right? I mean, the fever pitch of Derby fever is coming fast. And I've been here for 5 days now, and we're inching ever so close. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. We've been out at the track every morning. We're seeing all these fine steeds make their final tune-ups before the Derby and trying to make sense of this mess.
So, Mike, set the scene at Churchill Downs at the moment. What do we got cooking? How competitive do we see this race? Is this a Derby where there are a couple of prohibitive favorites? Or do you kind of look at this field going in and say, wide open, a lot of different horses can find their way to win?
So here's the dichotomy of what you just said is that the star of this show is clearly journalism. Journalism's a horse who's based in California, won the Santa Anita Derby. He ended his 2-year-old campaign by winning the Los Alamitos Futurity in December. And then this year, he's done nothing wrong. He's done everything right. He gets faster with each race. And his Santa Anita Derby was visually quite impressive because he didn't have the cleanest of trips, even though it was only a 5-horse field. He had some adversity. He had some contact behind the front runners, and he had to slide out a little bit, kind of pushed his way out. Rubbin's racing, my friend. Rubbin is racing. And he made a very impressive move. And everything about this horse, he checks every box, to use the cliche. His pedigree, his physical appearance, his race record, the way he's training coming in, the presence and the aura. He's got a great mind on him. He's had spectacularly fast races. He's had a dogfight in his most recent prep. So he's got that heart of a horse that wants to keep his nose in front. So he has captured every headline. There are very small things you can, not about the horse, but about his resume, about his CV that you can pick at. And then when you start digging a little deeper, I don't think he's the cinch that he may be. Now, my colleague, Simon Bray, that I work with every day this week, he thinks journalism he could be every bit as good as a horse who would threaten the Triple Crown.
Triple Crown type of horse. Yeah, that's where I was going. Okay.
Yeah, he thinks he's every bit as good as that. I look at it a little different. So we've been here all week. We're doing a show called Breakfast at the Kentucky Derby. And how about this? It's a serious show when they give me a free coffee mug, man.
Oh, that is tremendous. Yeah. You're not messing around.
Yeah, so it's super early in the morning. It's 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, and it's airing on the network on FanDuel TV. But we also have it on the YouTube page, streaming live at FanDuel Racing or at FanDuel Racing on YouTube. So it's streaming live when it's on there, and then it obviously lives there afterwards. So you can go check it out. But it's my favorite show to do all year. It's the first time we've done a breakfast show at Churchill Downs in about 15, 20 years. It's been a long time, and we're finally back doing it. And what we're doing is we're seeing all these horses and their works and their gallops and their breezes, and they hit the track from 7:15 to 8 o'clock. It's only Derby and Oaks horses. Oaks is the fillies race, basically the Kentucky Derby for girls. And what I've seen this week, I've seen a lot of horses that are tip top. There are some question marks. There are some horses I don't know that they should be here. Not that they shouldn't be here, but I don't know if they fit against the top notch. But I look at it as I think the top 4 or 5 horses are pretty tightly compact as far as ability, as far as physicality, where they are fitness wise. And I'm not going to back journalism. He's going to be probably the shortest price we've seen this race since California Chrome. He's probably going to be
okay. So big time favorite. Yeah.
He's going to be 5-2, maybe 2.5 to 1 is all you get. So he's going to be heavily favored. But I think there's a number of directions you can go. I'm leaning towards Sovereignty. And Sovereignty is a horse. There's a lot of storylines behind this horse. He's owned by the Godolphin stable. It's the largest stable in the world. And it's owned by Sheikh Mohammed, who's the Emir of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed Al Maktoum. They've been trying to win the Derby for 30 years. He actually came into the sport like everything in Dubai. Remember, like Dubai was just a strip of desert out on the Arabian Peninsula 35 years ago. Now it's one of the biggest cities in the world with the greatest architecture and the highest buildings. And it just
and they won in American sports in a big time way.
Exactly.
Across the board. Yeah.
And horse racing was the first one. And he's been saying for 30 years, we're winning the Derby. And at one point, I think, I don't know if Sheikh Mohammed said it or one of his representatives said, we're going to win the Derby within 5 years. And that was 30 years ago. So they're still looking for their first Derby. And they've had great chances. And they have great horses. And they can spend more money on horses. They can spend more money breeding horses than anyone else. They have these royal blue silks that you can see from anywhere in the country, right? You can look down and you're like, there's the royal blue of Godolphin. And Sovereignty is a horse that Bill Mott has brought along really slowly. He knew the goods were there. The trainer, Bill Mott, is a Hall of Fame trainer. He's won a Derby before, but he won it by virtue of disqualification when they disqualified Maximum Security 5 or 6 years ago, whenever it was, for bumping down the stretch. And then Country House got put up at gigantic odds. That was Bill Mott's horse. So he's won the Derby. He's had all the fanfare, but he hasn't crossed the wire first yet. And we're talking about a guy who is one of the greatest trainers to ever throw a saddle over a horse.
Okay, so would you recommend for anybody throwing out these trifectas, the exactas, whatever? Are you getting Sovereign, getting basically every single one we can? Is that the way we should do this, Mike?
Yeah. So if I'm playing, let's say I'm playing like a double, right? There's the Oaks Derby double where you bet, you're trying to get the winner of just 2 races, or there's doubles in and out of every race where you're trying to win, consecutive races. If I'm playing doubles, or if I'm playing like a pick 5, or I'm playing a sequential wager where I got to hit a lot of races, I'm gonna get coverage, right? I'm gonna opt in for another number of horses. I'll use Journalism. I'll use Sandman, who was the winner of the Arkansas Derby. Sovereignty, of course. I'll use Grande for Todd Pletcher. I'd use Publisher, who the craziest story in this race is Publisher is a maiden, and what a maiden is a horse who's never won a race. And it's very unlikely to get a maiden into the Kentucky Derby because to qualify, you have to win points races and you have to compete in points races. Now, even though he's never won a points race or any race, he's finished second, he's finished third. He acquired enough points along the way to get in, but he's never won a race. And if he were to win his first race in the Kentucky Derby, that would be the wildest story we've seen in 100 years. Not only that, his trainer, Steve Asmussen, has never won a Derby. Steve Asmussen has the world record for most career races won. He's won over 10,000 races in his career. He is hands down one of the greatest to ever train, and by many accounts, the greatest to ever train because of the earnings that he has as a record and the number of wins he has as a record. But he's never won the Derby. And he's
it's like Phil Mickelson at the U.S. Open here, Mike.
Yes,
like Phil
exactly
at the Open.
Yeah. So he has 2 shots in there, Tistastic and Publisher, but Publisher would be the maiden. So you'd get the greatest trainer of all time breaking his maiden with the maiden in the Derby, and Publisher probably goes postward 20-1 or thereabouts. So he's a big price that I would use as well.
I was going to say, is that your favorite long shot in this particular race at the moment?
Betting purposes, yes. I'm so unconvinced with the Steve Asmussen horses, but I was down in Louisiana when his other horse, Tistastic, won. And it proved me wrong. And so I'm just trying to handicap my own losses, right? I'm trying to take where was I wrong? And I knew I went wrong with him. So of those 2 horses, I like Publisher a little better, but they're virtually identical animals. Just that Tistastic's actually won and Publisher hasn't. But yeah, that is a horse at a price that I would absolutely use. And then the other story that you have to know the name Cole Battle, because Cole Battle is trained by a 72-year-old guy named Lonnie Briley, who's been in the sport for 40 years. He is a small town trainer. This would be like the Toledo Mud Hens winning the World Series, right? Only in horse racing could a horse from the minor leagues like this make his way into the Derby. But take the feel-good story aside, this is a legit animal. He won the Rebel Stakes at Oaklawn in Arkansas. He is a fantastic horse.
Now, you're going to be at the Derby all week. Tell me what we got cooking, Mike, on FanDuel TV and on the FanDuel app for people who want to get involved betting and having a little fun with the Kentucky Derby, maybe for the first time.
So let's start with the betting because we know what your viewers and listeners really want to know, betting-wise. FanDuel Racing is a great app for those of you who want to just open the app and get the $500. You can get a $500 no-sweat first bet. So you bet the Kentucky Derby. If you don't win up to $500, we're going to refund that in wagering credits. But also the FanDuel Sportsbook app is the #1 app used to bet on the Kentucky Derby. And it's just a fact. This isn't me just like spewing out being a company guy. FanDuel has the horse racing pedigree, right? I mean, FanDuel is a part of the TVG family. We've been doing account wagering, app wagering for 25 years, whereas sports betting's just come around in the last several years. We've already had that pedigree. That was kind of the front running into that marketplace, was being in horse racing. So no sportsbook app is going to have what we have as the ability for you. And it's very easy. It's the only app where you have one account. You can bet sports and you can bet horse racing. So the $500 no sweat bet is good for the Kentucky Derby for those of you who are betting horse racing for the first time.
Mike Joyce, check him out. Mike, enjoy the Derby, buddy. Thank you for a few minutes. Appreciate it.
Right. Thanks, brother.
Before we say goodbye, best bets Thursday night. Fellas, House, we'll start with you. Take it away.
I'm on this Cavaliers Indiana Pacers series. I know earlier on the show it sounded like I was being disrespectful to the Pacers and dismissive. I do respect the Pacers. One of the bets that I like very much is over 5.5 games in this series at -115. The Pacers finished in 2025, 33-15 is the run that they're on. They're a good basketball team. I do think that they'll be competitive with this Cavalier team. They went 3-1 in their head-to-heads this year. The Pacers did. But ultimately, I think the Cavs are the better side. And so my very, very best bet is the Cleveland Cavaliers -1.5 games in this series, -188 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's a lot of juice to lay, but it is the right play. And there's a couple ways to get it home. Cavs -1.5 games, -188 is my favorite bet.
I spoke about this at length already. I'm going with the Denver Nuggets on the money line +235. Look, if they lose, we're going back to the well again in game 7, but I cannot trust James Harden. If you look at his stats the other night, I mean, they're averaging 0.77 points per 100 possessions when he touched the ball the last game. Give me the Nuggets. They lose, we're going back to the well again. But I don't think they're going to lose this game.
Well, Raheem, I hate to be that guy, but I'm going to be that guy. I'm going heads up against you here because I think it's one of two outcomes. Denver winning the game outright, like you just illustrated, or the Clippers coming out and giving you a performance that's similar to what we saw in game number 3. And with all of a sudden now, Denver winning 2 games in a row, I thought this line would be a little lower. It's not. It's at 6.5. I think there'll probably be a crash and burn, disgusting way for the Clippers to go and lose this series because they're cursed. I will lay the 6.5 tonight and hold my nose with the Clippers. You know what I'm going to do with this Pacer Cavs series? House, we both can win. I'm taking Indiana +2.5 games at -140. I'm going to lay a little juice and say that Indiana wins at least 1 in Cleveland. They win 1 at home. They lose in a tidy 6. House, you cash yours. I cash mine. And we go about our merry way and enjoy the Eastern Conference Finals. That's going to do it for this loaded East Coast bias. Raheem from Vegas, House from D.C., JJ from New York City signing off. We'll see you on Monday. Boys are out. Be good, everybody.